Having the right composition of the board is a key to the success of the organization. We must have the geographical diversity.
Wonderful.
Invite the people from different parts of the world on your board. When I was clever yesterday, I wanted to change the world. I am wiser today, I am going to change myself. Companies need to do their own assessment of sustainability first. I always believe that culture plays a very, very important role. But do a cultural audit. And based on that, find out whether this culture is suitable for the future of your organization. According to me, the most difficult role in the world today is of independent directors. No doubt about that. When you come to an MSME or when you come to a startup, I would say that a role of an independent director on board of a startup or MSME is more of a mentor. My views about the mentoring, and I have very high regard for MentorMyBoard because of that. You are doing a pious work by creating the mentors for the board. So mentoring role is a very, very important, which in a MSME or startup director needs to understand.
Today with us is Mr. Sunil Deshmukh, the Global Chair of IMA. He is the first Asian to be on the chair of IMA, and we welcome you, sir, to this podcast series. Thank you for joining us. Boardrooms are a place where fortunes of great companies are written. And at MentorMyBoard, we wish to bring out those unheard stories from the boardrooms through this podcast where leaders thrive. Today with us is Mr. Sunil Deshmukh, the Global Chair of IMA. He is the first Asian to be on the chair of IMA, and we welcome you, sir, to this podcast series. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Neha. I really appreciate. And I must say that you opened the statement with the fortunes are made in the boardroom. I must state that my fortune is made or was made in boardroom, but not the financial fortune, but intellectual fortune.
So today we wish to discuss about the revolutionizing of boardrooms through innovation and through board composition and the structures that are there in the boardrooms. And for that, Sunil sir, my first question to you is modernizing the board practices. How are most critical changes in the boardrooms that need to implement to stay relevant in the today's scenario?
Yeah, very interesting question, Neha. And I must admit that any board, be it a corporate or non-profit board, it's a vital management which runs the company, which runs the organization. And having the right composition of the board is a key to the success of the organization. Some of the areas what I thought are very important, and because I have sat on multiple boards, based on my experience, I could say that we must have a diversity on the board. And when I say diversity, I does not mean the only a gender diversity. Of course, gender diversity is the key. And we are lucky to have in India a Companies Act which makes it compulsory for a listed company to have a women director on the board. But I am talking here, in addition to gender diversity, we must have the geographical diversity.
Wonderful.
Invite the people from different parts of the world on your board. In addition to the geographical diversity, I would also suggest that we need to have skill set diversity. In today's world, we are governed by so many different things. You cannot have every single skill available within your organization. So you need to borrow or you need to invite that skill on your board by ensuring that there is enough skill diversity on the board. And last but not the least, I would also say that the cognitive diversity. Cognitive diversity is a diversity or ability of the board members to speak in the board meeting, think intellectually, reflect upon the difficult problems, and work for the success of the company. So these are some of the diversities I thought are very, very important for a success of a modern day board.
So you importantly mentioned about the diversity on the boardroom, and I want to stress on this topic by understanding how is it that you actually identify these gaps in the boards with regards to the diversity, and how is it that those technological tools help you in fulfilling these gaps on the boards?
So very interesting question, and let me tell you on one of the boards what I have done or what that organization have done. So we did a skill gap analysis of all the board members on the board. So we asked every single board member to list down what are the expert skills they are carrying. And based on that, we created a mapping. And in this particular case, we found out that on that particular board, we have a skill set gap for cyber security.
Wonderful.
Everyone is good in finance, legal, and strategy, go-to-market strategy. But we found out that there is a shortage of cyber security. So this skill set gap analysis helped us to do that. In addition to that, a very innovative approach which I followed in one of the boards, again, international boards, is before recruiting the board members, we conducted the psychometric analysis of the incoming board members. And when you do, the intention of psychometric analysis is that you need to know the personality of the person who is coming on the board. And that personality approach was so different and so unique. And I still remember that we were having a meeting in Rotterdam. And in that meeting, everyone was surprised to see that the psychometric gave us so many things which were not known to us and which you and me cannot find out by an interview. And that was again an aspect of a diversity from a different personalities, right?
Right.
We have, and board carries a lot of ego also, means I always bring into ego aspect, but you need to understand that there has to be a balance on the board.
True.
And when I say balance, it's intellectual balance, but it also needs a balance of egos, a balance of experience, balance of diversity, and balance of ability to speak at any point of time.
Right.
So these are the two approaches, I think, skill set gap analysis and doing a psychometric analysis of the board members would be one area which can help you.
And what are the kind of trainings that you would kind of insist for the board members? Because as you mentioned, not everyone has all the skills on the boards. So what is the role of trainings that you feel is on the board requirement?
I always said that, and there is a famous saying by the 13th century Persian poet, when I was clever yesterday, I wanted to change the world. I am wiser today, I am going to change myself. So each board member also need to understand that they also need a training. Even though you are expert in a particular field, but when you are sitting on a board, you are obviously not having knowledge of every single thing. So board training is a must and essential, and we should conduct board training based on that skill gap analysis. When you do the skill gap analysis, you will find out there are skill gaps in certain areas. For example, let us say cyber security is one area I said, but you may have a skill gaps on things like sustainability, environmental, social and governance. So how to bring that knowledge into the board. But I would even go to the very basic, how to work or how to work together in a board meeting. That training is also needed. And it all boils down to the culture of the board, the ability of the people to mix with each other. So training is very, very essential. And as a good governance practice, one of the boards where I work, we carry training in every single board meeting for 1 hour, compulsory for all board members.
That's amazing. You wonderfully touched upon two very important points. The one was ESG and the other was board training, which is based on the skill set gap requirement. I wanted to focus on the first one, that is the ESG. So how should boards incorporate sustainability or ESG practices into their ongoing strategies and in the discussions during the board meetings?
So first thing I always advise the companies, as far as the sustainability and ESG is concerned, companies need to do their own assessment of sustainability first. Where do you stand as of today? For that, you need to do the assessment as of today.
Right.
What are your sustainability practices as far as environmental is concerned, social and governance, all this. Now, this assessment should be done by an independent agency, which is not within the company. And once that assessment and report is ready, they will find out there are gaps in certain areas. Now, based on those gaps, there could be gaps in environmental, could be in social, could be in governance. Company needs to come out with a strategy that what they want to do for next 3 to 5 years, and then start providing training to the board members for those areas.
Interesting. You also mentioned about the board culture, which is really very important for the entire organization to thrive and not only the boards. So would love if you can highlight something on the board culture.
Yeah, all of you know my famous statement is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's not my statement by Peter Drucker, but I always believe that culture plays a very, very important role. and I have very often used the term called cultural competence. Particularly when you're sitting in the board, the cultural competence become very, very important. Because there are different people. Initially, we discussed about the diversity, geographical diversity, intellectual diversity, skill set diversity. Now that diversity you have already ensured and they are sitting together. Now you need to have a culture which will allow people to work together, interact together, respect each other. Now that culture is a predominantly practice followed by the board over a period of time. And it is also an area where your leadership management will copy you or will follow you. So creating a right culture, ensuring that right culture is implemented is not only the responsibility of the chairman of the board, but it is also the responsibility of the entire board collectively. Companies need to work out, think differently. I even say that have a brainstorming session, what type of cultural diversity or culture we would like to have within our boards. Technology companies may have different culture. Brick and mortar companies may have different culture. So the boards and companies need to know what is their own culture. So I will again say here, do your own culture audit first. I'm using the word audit here, which is a little bit strong word, but do a cultural audit. And based on that, find out whether this culture is suitable for the future of your organization. If not, try to change the culture. If it is fit, continue that.
Wonderful. I think this cultural audit is something really new and the boards must take it up seriously. So how do boards better engage with the stakeholders to ensure that their perspectives are also considered in the decision making?
Yeah, so there is a term called stakeholder capitalism. And there is a terminology called triple P or triple bottom line. So John Elkington brought in the concept of triple P, where he talks about a company should look at profit, people and stakeholders or planet.
Yeah.
But here the stakeholder in today's world, stakeholder is a very, very important, and not only the shareholder is a stakeholder.
Correct.
You can have a stakeholder as your creditors, maybe your customers, your employees, your labor union, could be your government, community, municipal corporation, and of course the stock exchange and tax department and so many. So all these stakeholders need to be represented appropriately. And this is again a concept of sustainability, that if you want to have a sustainable organization, you need to have suitable representation to all the stakeholders on your board, and you need to give them opportunity also to speak their mind. And boards need to understand that a stakeholder's views need to be respected, understood, and then action being taken. So stakeholder capitalism has become very important in today's world. And we are seeing that many places in the world, because of stakeholder capitalism, certain projects have been hampered or not allowed to go ahead, or certain projects have been moving very fast because stakeholders are on the same page.
True. And independent directors are generally considered those custodian for those stakeholders at large, and especially for the minority stakeholders. So how do you see the role of independent directors inside the boardrooms, and what is it that you would suggest them?
According to me, the most difficult role in the world today is of independent directors. No doubt about that. Independent directors, I look at them as a referee or a neutral person who should not have any interest in anything. Their role is very, very pivotal, important from everyone's point of view, and which also includes minority stakeholders or the other stakeholders. Because when other stakeholders trust you and trust typically the independent director, trust is the most difficult thing in the world. And there is very famous saying in this famous Dutch proverb, which says that trust comes on the foot and lives on the horseback.
Wow.
Means it takes time to create the trust, but it takes seconds to lose the trust. True. So independent directors' role becomes very important. They have to ensure that trust relationship between them and the minority stakeholders or any other stakeholder which is depending on the independent director is maintained continuously. Independent director need to have very open communication and conversation on one side with the stakeholders, but on the other side with the board also. And in the board meeting, independent director need to very clearly state his or her views on a particular issue. And if he or she is uncomfortable on that issue, they need to make a suitable arrangements to ensure that that issue or that problem is properly addressed from the point of view of company as well as the stakeholder.
You rightly mentioned about the role of independent directors here. Now, there are two categories basically: independent directors who are representing big listed companies' boards. There are new age independent directors on boards of maybe SME, MSME companies who are now eyeing towards IPO. So, how do you see a differentiation in their roles? Because these companies are largely promoter driven companies, and the decision making authority largely lies with the promoters as well. So how do you see their contribution in those boardrooms then?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. When you're sitting on a large company's board, maybe a listed company, there is enough knowledge base available, enough expertise is available. So role of independent director becomes a little bit limited. But when you come to an MSME or when you come to a startup, I would say that a role of an independent director on a board of a startup or MSME is more of a mentor. And that mentoring concept, and as you know my views about the mentoring, and I have very high regard for MentorMyBoard because of that. And I still remember my first discussion, I think it was in the year 2019 when we had, and I said that you are doing a pious work by creating the mentors for the board, right? So mentoring role is a very, very important, which in a MSME or startup, director needs to understand. They need to do a little bit of hand holding, take that MSME or startup to the next level, sometimes get involved a little bit more than a normal independent director will get involved. And they need to sort of coach. I'm using the term now coach. I'm not using the word counsel. I'm using the word coach. They need to coach that promoter or founder. And I do the same thing. That's my profession right now, But I think you do that, you will get tremendous happiness. I use the word bliss. You will get into the bliss mode of your life if you convert a SME founder or SME co-founder and allow him to go next level up to the IPO level. That experience, that satisfaction is beyond imagination. So I think independent director needs to understand that when you are in a large professional company, your role is limited. But when you are in a small or medium-sized company, your role is a little bit more of a hand-holding, a fatherly figure, a coach, a mentor.
Perfect. I also wanted to understand something more on the advisory board roles that a lot of startups today need, and the people who have those kind of experience. How do you see those roles in the startup space?
No, I think that's a new trend, and we should not deny. It's very well. I sit on some board as an advisory board member myself in Dubai and in Middle East. So the differentiation here is that a lot of directors do not want to get involved legally. Accountability point of view, that's number one aspect. Second aspect is they are experts in a particular area only, and they want to give you advice on that specific area.
Right.
And also there are so many other combinations, how many meetings you will be able to attend as an independent director. There are requirements of company law. People are not available. So because the world is open now, we can talk to anyone in the world online, virtually. You have opportunity to recruit the people or appoint the people on your board from anywhere in the world. And most of them would love to come as advisory board members, because a person coming from US may not understand Indian Companies Act.
Correct.
But he is ready to part his knowledge with you.
True.
Now, parting the knowledge in an advisory capacity is much easier than in a legal capacity. So advisory board is a concept which is mushrooming, which is growing very, very fast, and we should respect that. And in today's technology world, the lifespan of companies, the lifespan of startup, successful startup or unsuccessful startup is so limited. The advisory board concept works very well. And for a specific project, you can bring an advisor. After that purpose is achieved, maybe that advisory board member can walk out and say, hey, my work is done now. You're on your own. Best of luck.
I think that's a wonderful thing that you brought in this discussion. One more thing which you already mentioned about that, people are ready to contribute even when they are not in India. So the world is now open towards advisors, right?
Yep.
So this brings me to my next question. How is it that you get onto boards of international organizations, or how is it that you have someone from an international perspective who is advising you or on your board with you? So please throw some light, and as you are already part of IMA, so we would love to know about that as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I have been practicing this for a long time, almost 3 decades now. So there are two ways according to me. One is the organic path and other is the inorganic path.
Right.
Organic path is, let us suppose you are working in one of the multinational companies and you have a subsidiary company, let us say in Bangladesh, or your subsidiary company, let us say in Mauritius or Singapore, you're likely to get that opportunity provided you are right connections, your right knowledge and expertise.
Right.
You can go by way of internal recruitment process, and which is organic, right? They knowing you, you knowing them, it's comparatively easier. But how many people get such chances? That's very limited.
It's limited.
Then you have to go to the inorganic process, which is you are an external party, but you want to sit on an international board. So there are 2-3 aspects I would touch upon here, not everything. One of them is very, very important is your network is your net worth. If you have a right type of network in the world, then only you are likely to get introduced to the right boards and right position.
True.
So create your own network. And that's very, very important. Many people neglect the aspect of networking. I would highly recommend have an international network. And because of technology, global platforms, you can network with anyone. There are enough social platforms. And India is a country now where we have got huge opportunities. So create your own network. Second is have some international qualification. Now, when I say international qualification means nowadays there are plethora of qualifications and expertise and skill set available. I would say try to have at least one of them, which will also give you a networking platform. Also, it will give you an opportunity to reach out to the specific country.
Right.
Third approach, I would say that you start looking at social platforms. You know there are various social platforms. They advertise the international global board positions. Start applying for that. And Indians are highly respected in the world now. I'm not saying because of I am sitting on the global board, but we see that at multiple companies, the Indians are at a senior position. So the approach of looking at Indians as a global board member is changed now.
Wonderful. That's
the
great to
prejudice
hear, in
which
fact.
was existing 10 years back or 15 years back is not at all there. So that's a beauty, and according to me, I have seen when people go on the international board, they perform exceedingly well. Indians are hardworking people, very smart people, knowledgeable people, and they are very focused on their work. Right? So I think all these are their combination of these things, but it's a process. Don't assume that you made one connection means you will get an international position.
True.
It takes time. Let it take its time. Keep continuing your networking. Keep reaching out to the people. And of course, platforms like MentorMyBoard may help you. Who knows?
Thank you. So we also add that networking at the right time and with right people is also equally important, because simply networking does not help or solve the purpose.
Agreed.
Since we are speaking about the global landscape right now, I come to my next question, which is on the crisis management role. So what are the key elements of effective crisis management or the strategies that boards should implement?
So interesting question, and today we live in the VUCA world. We all know, like, volatile, uncertain, complicated and ambiguous world. Crisis is a part and parcel of our day-to-day survival.
True.
Means we had a big crisis of technology 2 weeks back when all our emails were impacted. Right? So boards need to understand that first is boards need to do their risk framework, risk analysis, and there is enough knowledge base on that. There is a COSO framework or risk management. So boards need to analyze the risk the company carries. And from the risk, you need to work out if there is a crisis. Let's say, for example, again, COVID-19 type of thing happens.
True.
What can happen? So board should have that type of plan ready. If there is a cyber security attack, it's a crisis situation. What should the board do? There should be a plan ready. If there are floods, like we had in India or right now, we had in Kerala, in Wayanad.
Yeah.
So what type of crisis plan we have? So it is always said that if you cannot handle the crisis at the last moment, if you think of the crisis in advance, prepare different scenarios. We talk scenario planning, and based on that, create a crisis action plan and then work upon that. And that's how only you can handle the crisis. If it is all of a sudden crisis, chances are there that you may not be successful.
Perfect. Super. So my last question, maybe the second last one, I want to understand about the future trends, because we've been speaking about the past, the current, so the future is equally important. So what are the emerging trends that you foresee in the governance landscape which revolutionize boardrooms in the next decade? And how should boards be prepared for those kind of changes?
So multiple things. One, I would say that be prepared to have young people on your board. So average age of the board is one criteria. Second criteria is be prepared to have a technologically driven boards. You may not have physical board meetings going forward.
True.
So be prepared to have a virtual board meetings all the time. Third is be prepared to have a diversity, equity and inclusion on your board, which is very, very important, and we touch upon that. Fourth is sustainability. Sustainability is going to be the key in the future. Be prepared to have understanding of environmental, social governance and make your board ready for that training. And last but not the least, your boards need to be agile and adaptive. If you are not agile and adaptive, you may just, someone will pass you on, right? So
True.
be prepared to be agile, be adaptive to the external situations, make sense what is happening outside the world, and change your board composition, change your board structure, board governance policies quickly and agile way.
Wonderful. I think it was a gamut of, wealth of information that you have passed on to us and to the audience here. One last question about MentorMyBoard, since we have been creating this platform and there are a lot of resources, tools available, mentorings available on the platform. What do you think? And as an investor to MentorMyBoard as well, what are your views about the organization?
So one is, I think I have been associated with MentorMyBoard since 2019 or 2020 when you just started the company, right? I'll tell you what I like about MentorMyBoard.
Sure.
And it's not because I'm an investor, right? I became investor much later.
Much later.
I'm talking more based on my knowledge, my expertise and all those things. One, what I like, and I must appreciate that, it's a woman-driven company. So first aspect of diversity, a big tick, right? Very important. I always believe that women have more intuition than the men, and I can prove it psychologically when we have differentiation on that topic.
Sure.
So women have more intuition, higher sixth sense, and they understand these aspects much better than the men. Third thing, I think MentorMyBoard was started at the right time when we were all going through difficulties like COVID and lockdown and sitting at home. So giving knowledge is I always say the giving knowledge is a pious work to the world. You started doing that. And very important is that training the future board members. No one does that. I mean, one can pass an exam, but does that mean he will become a good director? But on a continuous basis, giving a knowledge to the directors, the future directors, be it startup directors, be it SME directors, or be it listed company independent director. It's a process. It takes time. The platform, the technology platform of MentorMyBoard, the type of events you conduct, the WOMB program, which is very close to my heart, WOMB, right? You should have something like that for men also.
So we have IDEAL, that is Independent Directors Education and
yeah,
Learning.
but give some good name for that.
Definitely.
So I think all this combined together and the type of people who are associated with you, I think that's the beauty or that's the ability of Divya and Neha to bring the right type of people on the platform at the right point of time. Now, if you don't do that, there are many companies, I don't want to name, but there are many companies like this who do that. But your intention is beyond making the profit. So that aspect of educating the world of directors or creating the impact on the society, particularly the corporate world, I think that itself is a great vision, and I wish and I will be with you all the time. Do not worry about that. And
Blessed.
I wish you success to both of you. And I'm looking forward to interact again with you.
Thank you so much. It was really great speaking to you.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you very much.